It's now time for our speaker. We've seen him up and down the piano all morning, Bruce Shelton. And it's my pleasure to introduce Bruce. I've known Bruce for a number of years since I came to this church. He asked me to be a pastor here years ago. We actually met in this building when the altar was up here, and I can remember those days so clearly. And we got to know each other a little bit better at a funeral. He was the minister and I was the funeral director. That was a long time ago. We've had a great relationship over the years, and that relationship is what makes our church so special, this family that we have, this circle that we have. I look at Bruce, he always sits in the back there, and it always reminds me of an anchor. And Bruce is the anchor of our church. He serves as our senior pastor. He is currently serving as the president of our board of directors. And he does this not because he has to. He does this because he loves to. He loves this church. He loves each and everybody in this room today. And he continues to share with us, with his wisdom, with his love, with his presence. And we thank you for that, Bruce. You just come forward. We'll love to hear you speak today. Thank you. Bruce Shelton.
Thank you. All right. Well, as I like to do when I give my talks here, I'd like to ask you to help me to open this talk by just all of us be silent just for a few moments, and let's just ask for God just to talk through me this morning, to say the words that you really need to hear. So if we could just all be quiet for a moment, take a deep breath perhaps. Continue to feel the presence of God in this room. So for all good gifts, we give you thanks. Amen. All right. Well, it's indeed my pleasure to have this opportunity to talk to you this morning. Today we're going to talk about, this being Christmas week, we're going to talk about Jesus, who he was, what his teachings were, how we might be able to apply his teachings in our lives today. And we're particularly going to take a look at the Beatitudes, a series of 8 principles, 8 tenets that Jesus gave to us that opened the Sermon on the Mount, that serve as a summary of everything that Jesus came to teach us. Everything we need to know is found in these 8 Beatitudes. Moses had his 10 Commandments. The Buddha had his Eightfold Path. Jesus had his Beatitudes, his 8 Beatitudes. And so we'll be taking a look at those Beatitudes today to see what we can learn from them. This is the last day of 2017. It's a time for us, most of us like to maybe look back in terms of what's happened to us the past year. We've all had lots of adventures, lots of challenges, another year of growth. This is the time to also look forward to 2018. It's extremely helpful as we continue on this journey that we call living a life, that we have a roadmap, that we have a guidance system, a good navigator, so to speak, to help us along this path that we call living a life. This path that's taking us back home to God. Well, Jesus was the greatest navigator there ever was. And if we can understand his teachings and we can apply those teachings to our lives, 2018 can be the best year yet for us. And these Beatitudes provide us with a roadmap showing us what we can do, what we need to do in order to feel the presence of God within us every day. Now, I first was introduced to these Beatitudes when I was 16 years of age. Up to that point, I had been attending a Baptist church in Norfolk, Talbot Park Baptist Church. I will be forever grateful for all the wonderful people who went to that church, especially the adults who helped me during my teenage years. They had a wonderful music ministry in there, and that's how they hooked all the kids. So we had big youth choirs, and I learned they taught me about Jesus and about most importantly, how to pray. I felt the spirit of Jesus in that church. And however, when I'd ask myself basic questions like, who am I? What's my life all about anyway? Why is there so much suffering in the world? You know, we look at the news today and we see all the suffering. We say, man, it's never been this bad. Well, you know what? We always say that, don't we? It seems like always the good old days were better, but that's not really true. I remember back in the 60s when I was a teenager that I'd look at the news and it was just as bad. It was just different, you know. They reported it differently. And I was depressed. I was really struggling, and I was kind of like crying out to God for some help here. I just was really going through some hard times. But that's what set the stage, to open me up for some teachings that became vital to me as I've continued throughout my life. So one day I'm at a bookstore in downtown Norfolk, and I called the Beacon Bookstore, and it closed many years ago. But I stumbled, quote unquote, across a book called The Sermon on the Mount by a minister named Emmett Fox. Emmett Fox turned out to be, he was my first great spiritual teacher. He helped me to understand Jesus better than anyone has ever helped me to understand Jesus. And he gave an interpretation of this book, The Sermon on the Mount, that just made incredible sense to me. And all of a sudden, everything started coming together. I started understanding more clearly who I was and what I was here for and what I was going to be doing with my life. Well, for the next 2 years, I studied that book over and over every day. And when I look back, I can see that what was happening was I was laying a spiritual foundation upon which everything I've learned since that time has been built. The teachings of Jesus and the Sermon on the Mount. But if it wasn't for that wonderful spiritual teacher, Emmett Fox, I never would have quite understood what he was talking about. I never would have understood what Jesus was talking about. And so today, I'm 71 years of age today, at this time in my life. And so I've been applying these teachings and seeking to understand them all these years. And even as I was preparing for this talk, I found different and deeper meanings for these Beatitudes. And so I'd like to just share with you my understanding, which is always a work in progress because there's more for me to learn about this. But I'd like to share with you my understanding of some of these Beatitudes. We won't have time today to go over all 8, but let's take a look at several of them. The Beatitudes read like this: Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are they that mourn, for they shall be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Blessed are they that hunger and thirst after righteousness, for they shall be fulfilled. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall receive mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the children of God. And the last one is, Blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Those are the 8 Beatitudes. Now, the first thing we notice when we look at these Beatitudes is that each one of them starts with the word blessed, okay? Now, blessed is translated to mean happiness, but it means a lot more than that for these Beatitudes. To be blessed by God is the greatest thing that can happen to any of us, okay? To be blessed by God means we're being touched by God. It means we're being healed. It means everything we want, you see, we're experiencing to be blessed by God. So it actually means to awaken fully as to who we are. So in these Beatitudes, Jesus is telling us what we need to do in order to awaken. First Beatitude goes like this: Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Now, we've run into our first big problem here. What does poor in spirit mean? There's language used with these Beatitudes that we just don't normally use. What does kingdom of heaven mean? Well, Jesus used that term kingdom of heaven throughout his ministry, throughout his teachings, to represent simply the presence, the living presence of God within us. You see, that's what, when he talks about you'll find the kingdom of heaven, that's what he's talking about. We will experience, feel, see the presence of God, the kingdom of heaven. To do this, we need to be poor in spirit. Now, if I told any of you I thought you were poor in spirit, you'd probably think I was upset with you, right? It's like, what in the world does that mean, poor in spirit? Well, the word spirit, as it's used here, refers to the human mind, okay? It means that it's our challenge to let go of any thoughts that are within our own mind, any beliefs and thinking patterns that are within our own mind that are rooted in fear, okay? It means letting go of all thoughts that are rooted in, related to fear. Can everybody hear that? It means totally emptying our minds, you see, of all negativity, so that we will create a space for God to fill. In the religion of Taoism, they teach this concept of spaciousness by reminding us that the value of a door, a window, of a cup is the space between the frame. That's the value of a window, a door, and a cup, is the space. It's not the structure, it's the space within the structure that gives them their value. And the Taoists teach us that's our work, you see, is to empty our minds, to be poor of negative thoughts, so to speak, of our attachments to negative thoughts that we have within our mind. Create an empty space so that we can allow God to fill the cup with the spirit of divine love. Now, when we talk about negative thoughts, what exactly are we talking about? Well, examples are, tell me if you recognize any of these in your life: anger, resentments, regrets, guilt, judgments, a need for power and control, selfishness, self-centeredness. I know I'm not like that. Jealousy, worry, anxiety, despair, depression, and the list goes on. But everybody understands what I'm talking about. These are actually these are feelings and thoughts in our mind that we don't want anyway. Why? Because they make us miserable, you know. But how do we? So Jesus, all he's saying here is, let them go. Let go. Let them, offer them up to God. Let's take, for example, a look at this word resentments. That's one of my favorites. Anybody in this room looking at yourself and being totally honest, anybody in this room aware that you might have any resentments towards anybody? Be totally honest now. I do. I hate to admit it. But this is the thing. I understand that resentments are highly toxic for my mental health. I understand that, right? I absolutely understand it. So when I catch myself with a resentment towards somebody, I say, got you again. This is me talking to my own mind. Got you again. Okay, well, here, God, you take this resentment. I'm an addictions counselor, so I work a lot with folks who are experiencing addictions to various drugs or alcohol. And so I've learned a lot about Alcoholics Anonymous, and one of the things that Alcoholics Anonymous teaches is that they say if you have a resentment, you are allowing that other person to rent space within your own mind. Okay? If you have a resentment, you're allowing someone else to rent space within your own mind. You're bringing that person into your own mind, and guess who has to deal with that energy? Not the other person, you do. So I wake up at 3 in the morning and all of a sudden I'm thinking about somebody I'm upset with because they said something or whatever, right? Maybe, I know this is a good one for a lot of us right now, politics. Maybe I'm thinking about politics and be I Republican or Democrat, and it just gets me upset to think about it, right? I have a resentment towards politics, right? Or towards politicians. All right, when I catch myself getting like that, I have choices to make. I can go with that energy and allow myself to basically get my mind further agitated. I can do that. That's what my mind seems to want to do, is to analyze problems, you know, to absurdity, to, you know, just analyze it. And the more I do it, the more upset I get, whether it's with a situation like politics or whether it be with a person. I have another choice, though, you see. The other choice is to step back, take a deep breath, be the witness to the thought. This is a good concept, this idea of being the witness to these negative thoughts within our mind. Oh, I'm witnessing, there's that negative thought again. Here, God, you take this thought. I don't want it anymore. You take my anger. You take my resentments. You take all this negativity. I don't want it anymore. Jesus said to us, cast your burdens upon my shoulders and I will give you rest. He's invited us to do this, right? He can take that negative energy, transmute it into positive energy, you see? And so that's called spiritual work. That's the big challenge that we all have to deal with, is dealing with these negativities that are within our own minds that are causing us so much unhappiness. And can everybody hear that? See, we all know that's so true. The big problem in life is not what's going on out there in our lives. It's our thoughts about what's going on with our lives. And our big challenge is to purify our thoughts, get our thoughts right. And that takes us to, let's go to Beatitude number 7. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the children of God. All right, to be called the children of God means that we will then know who we are, because in truth we are the children of God. This teaching of that we are the offspring, the creation, the very children of God, is found all throughout the teachings of the Bible and throughout other spiritual texts of other religions as well. The first chapter of Genesis says, and God created man in his own image and likeness. And that theme goes all through the Bible. Jesus made it very clear that we're all the children of God. First two words of the Lord's Prayer, our Father, right? Our Father, which art in heaven. It can't be any clearer than that. So the thing is, we've forgotten who we are, you see. Through this beatitude, through being a peacemaker, we can remember, we can become aware of who we truly are. Jesus says we do this by being a peacemaker. Now, he's not suggesting that we join the Peace Corps or that we join the State Department and be a diplomat. That's great if that's your work this lifetime, if that's your karma, so to speak. Some people have that. But that only applies to a very small number of people. What Jesus is talking about is bringing, he's talking to each one of us and saying our challenge is to bring peace within our own mind. Okay? That's the challenge, to bring peace within our own mind. How do we do that? The most effective way that I have found is through the practice of daily prayer and meditation. Okay? That's the whole purpose of prayer and meditation, is two things, to calm our minds and to bring peace to our hearts. Okay? That's the whole purpose of prayer and meditation. Prayer and meditation go together. Prayer is, as Edgar Casey taught us, prayer is talking with God. Meditation is listening to God. Okay? We have one tongue and two ears. And so our challenge, you see, is in communication, God wants us to commune with God. God wants us wants us to be co-creators. So we're co-creators when we create. That's the prayer side. Then we have the meditations when we receive the energy from God. You see, we need both. We need to have that lifeline, that connection with God. And so we create peace in our mind by through the practice of daily prayer and meditation. This is, for myself, this has been my salvation. Emmett Fox taught me way back when I was 16 years old the value of just putting aside an hour every day just to be with God. And I've done that all my life, and it's made all the difference. I personally I think I'd be in a mental institution right now. Many years ago, because I guess my mind's more crazy than most people, but this meditation is just wonderful. Every time I meditate, I can feel God's presence. Whew. Just saying that, I could feel the energy rush into me. All right, let's take a look at the fifth beatitude, I think it is. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. Okay? Emmett Fox said to me many years ago, he said that we're all very much like a colorblind man who, for example, goes into the most beautiful garden in the world. Okay, if you imagine that. The most beautiful garden in the world. This man is not only colorblind, but he's also got problems with his hearing. He's got problems with smell. He's walking through the garden. He can't see the beautiful colors. He can't hear the birds, the crickets. He can't smell the beautiful fragrances of the flowers. He's in this garden, but he just doesn't see it as it really is. The truth is, all of us are living in a garden. You see, in the Bible, in the very beginning, they call it the Garden of Eden. Right now, at this very moment, this garden that we're in is so incredibly beautiful, but we can't see it, you see, because our spiritual eyes are impaired. Our spiritual ears are impaired. So Jesus is teaching us here, blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. Okay? The pure in heart, being pure in heart opens our spiritual eyes. It opens our ears. It opens all of our senses. The truth is, there's a great spiritual power that pervades all that exists, that is the creator of all that exists, that sustains all that exists. It's all within us. God is omnipresent within every cell of our body, right? And the way we become aware of this is through purifying our heart. Now, what does that mean? Okay? I think of the heart, I associate the heart with feelings. I associate the head with thoughts. So the first beatitude is clearing up our heads. Blessed are the poor in spirit, poor in the mind, of negative thoughts. This is all about purifying our heart. When I think of this beatitude of a pure heart, I think of Mary, the mother of Jesus. Mary represents you and I. Okay? Mary represents the consciousness that is so pure that there is nothing left within her consciousness but the spirit of love, divine love. Okay? This is what Mary consciousness is all about. Mary's was then, because of the state of her consciousness, was able to have union with God. The Christ was born. Okay? The Christ is a living presence within each one of us. Okay? That's the whole teaching right there in the nativity story. Mary gave birth to the Christ. She did this through purifying her heart, letting go of all impurities. One of my favorite spiritual teachers is a guy named Ram Dass. Some of you have heard of Ram Dass. I love this guy. He's been one of my most important teachers. And he said at one point, he said, our life consists of a series of experiences, each one of which is perfectly designed to cook the seeds of impurities that are within our mind. Okay? Everybody hear that? I'm going to repeat it just to emphasize it. Our life consists of a series of experiences, every one of which is perfectly designed to cook the seeds of impurities that are within our minds. Okay? This means every experience we have, every relationship we have, every person we meet, every job we've ever had, our financial situation and so forth, our health situation, everything is perfectly designed to cook the seeds of impurities. What happens is we go through life and it seems like some days are sunny, some days are stormy. You know, we go through life and it's like we keep getting these curveballs thrown at us. You know, we're not expecting to have something happen and something happens. It can be a relationship problem, a job problem, a health problem, whatever, right? Finances, that's a good one, right? And all of a sudden now I've got all this fear has been awakened in me because of this particular situation, okay? That can be a good thing because it's only when these thoughts, these negative thoughts are awakened and activated in me that I can actually face them and let them go, okay? So in a sense, anytime we have a problem with somebody this person's very upsetting to us, maybe it's a boss on the job or whatever it might be, in a way that person is our greatest teacher, right? Because that person is awakening stuff within me that I need to face and let go of. Can everybody hear that? You see, so this is what Ram Dass is talking about, you know, cooking the seeds. We cook the seeds it's painful because we don't like having all this negativity, all this fear, anger or depression or worry to be awakened in us, right? But it's actually a great thing because it provides us with an opportunity to face our dark side, so to speak, and to transmute that energy, that fear energy, into divine love. Okay? So that's what we're talking about here when we talk about purifying our consciousness, purifying our heart. Well, I have time, I think, for one more beatitude. I'd like to take a look at the second beatitude. Blessed are they that mourn, for they shall be comforted. Boy, that sounds like a downer, doesn't it? Personally, I'm glad to be comforted, but I'd like not to mourn in the first place, right? Well, so what does this mean? Well, Jesus' whole teaching is very positive. In John 15, he says that I have come that my joy might be within you, that your joy might be complete. Okay? He says, I've come to give you the truth, and the truth shall set you free. It's all extremely positive. It's about salvation, awakening. What is this all about? Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Well, in this beatitude, Jesus is addressing the whole issue of suffering that all of us go through in life. Okay? Jesus lived in a culture much like our own. I would say every culture, where he looked out and he saw suffering everywhere. People are suffering from sicknesses and growing old and dying and so forth and so on. The Buddha did the same thing. He looked out in his culture and he saw all this suffering. And the first of the the Four Noble Truths was called dukkha, which means life consists of suffering. Eckhart Tolle, who's another one of my favorite teachers, says that the greatest spiritual teacher in the world is not a religion. It's not even a spiritual person, a spiritual teacher. The greatest spiritual teacher in the world is suffering, because suffering is universal. Suffering affects us all equally. Whether we be king or pauper, whether we be rich or poor, whether we be Russian or American, suffering is across the board. Some people certainly experience more than others, okay? But we all experience suffering. Now, what's the purpose of it all? Jesus says we experience mourning, suffering, we'll be comforted. Well, if you look at your life, take a moment and look back at your life, and I ask you, when you look back at the times when you've had the hardest times in your life, have you noticed it was during those times that you prayed a little bit more? That you really, God help me, I need some help here, I'm so sick, I need help. Whatever it might be, you see. Isn't that interesting how we are, you see? And so suffering is the one force that can motivate us to break free of this egoic mind and look to a power greater than our own minds, okay? Suffering can motivate us to break free, so to speak, from the shell that we call the human ego. But there's an old saying that the time to repair the leak on your house, the best time to repair a leak on your house is on a sunny day, not on a rainy day. Okay? So the suffering can be brought way down if instead of just praying when you're in extreme crisis of some type, praying every day, even when things are going right for you. You see, that's the best way to prepare yourself for the hurricanes of life that sometimes hit each one of us. Okay? Daily prayer, having that relationship with God as you understand God. Does that make sense to everybody? You see? So, anyway, I just find these Beatitudes to be wonderful. Each one of them has got a very deep meaning. At another time I'll have to talk about the other four. But I do want to tell each one of you I love you a great deal, and it's been my honor to speak to you this morning. Thank you.